Is stropping alone enough? Welcome back to the channel. Pull up a chair, have a seat. Let's talk today about one singular question that I get more than any other question, whether it's on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, wherever. Is stropping alone enough? Yes. No. The answer to that question is far more fuzzy than I can possibly put into a text block. So I want to do a video just to answer this question. Understand, I've got a video on stropping. I've got a video on sharpening. If you're wanting to know how to do those things, that is the source for that information. Today we're going to talk about whether or not stropping alone is enough. And I'm going to attempt to answer it to the best of my ability. Understand, and I understand this as well. I want to make sure I'm saying this first off. Everyone's opinion is going to differ. This is going to be about defining a little bit what stropping is so we can determine whether or not it's enough. Because the line between stropping and sharpening can be really rather fuzzy when we get down into it. There are as many opinions on stropping, sharpening, and honing as there are wood carvers. And we're not always going to agree on definitions, but we have to come to a bit of an understanding for so many of the newer wood carvers that are out there so that they understand the differences we're talking about when we talk about is stropping alone enough. Because while one person may answer this, they might answer it assuming that the person they're answering the question to has a bit of background knowledge that they might not have. So let's solve that by getting that background knowledge. What is stropping? Stropping is the process of polishing the very edge of a knife using a flexible material like leather to refine and realign the microscopic edge, making it sharper. It's a crucial step in knife maintenance and can be also used to remove tiny burrs left behind by sharpening. Stropping is not sharpening in the sense of removing metal, but rather a refinement process that polishes the edge and removes any imperfections that might be present after sharpening. Okay, so that's stropping. We got stropping now, we know what stropping is. It's pretty simple. When we sharpen, we do it on sandpaper, we do it on diamond stones, we do it based on grits. Grits can be 220 up to 3,000, 20,000. People get really deep into what grits they're going to use. But we're not just using grits on sandpaper. We're also using grits in our compounds, in our stropping compounds, and not all of those are created equal. You can see we got two greens here in the middle. We got flex cut gold here on the left. I often suggest flex cut gold as the first stropping compound, but it is also removing microscopic bits of metal. And if you're using a grit, are you really stropping or are you now sharpening? That's where it gets fuzzy. That's where everyone gets confused, because if you're using stropping compounds, you're using grits, you're on that scale of removing metal now. When we talk about grits, we have a disparity between the American standards and the European standards. And the American standards go by a name called CAMI. European standards go by FEPA, the Federation of European Producers of Abrasives. These are not a one-for-one comparison. You can tell because pretty easily on sandpaper, this is a little piece of 220 grit sandpaper. And on the back, it's got 220 grit. That is the American standard for 220 grit. If it was the European standard for 220 grit, it would say P220. Now, when it comes to these standards, 180 for American standard is about a P200 grit for the European standard. It's pretty close. A 60 is a 60 across the board, but as you get higher in grit numbers, as you get finer in that level of abrasives, those standards get pretty far off. An 800 grit CAMI, the American standard, is equivalent to about a P1500 in the European standard. So when people tell you which grits to use, they're not going to be universally a one-for-one. Even with this 220 grit sandpaper that I have, which is American standard, I can have this 220 grit diamond stone, and putting them side by side and feeling them, the sandpaper is much more abrasive than the diamond stone, but they're the same grit levels, right? So it's not going to be a one-for-one when it comes to this stuff. But does that really matter for the wood carver who's sharpening or stropping a knife? Yes and no. It depends on what level you're looking to get into this and how deep down the rabbit hole you really want to go. I don't think it matters. In my opinion, it doesn't matter. And the level of sharpness that I'm looking to do, it doesn't matter. If I was a knife manufacturer, if I was Ben Beckwith, if I was Badger State Blades, if I was Rich Smithson over at Helvey Knives, I'd probably care. at my level, doing what I'm doing, I don't care. I can get a fine grit, 1200 grit abrasive, and if that's actually a 1500 grit, I'll make do with it. Because when you're taking off metal using a sandpaper or an abrasive stone or a high grit abrasive compound for your strop, you are still just trying to remove a little bit of metal. And if I'm using approximately 1200, oh, it might be 1500, oh, it might be 800, I can see and take a feel of the blade and see what's happening to the blade and then adjust accordingly. And so I can change what I'm doing based on what I'm seeing and feeling. If I was going to be doing 100 knives, it would matter. But if I'm going to be doing one, it's not going to matter that much. And so I'm not going to be getting too in depth in that in my own work. And so it's not going to matter as much to me. That's what we're doing here. We're only worrying about the individual wood carver in their own home. We're not worrying about knife manufacturers. Those guys know what they're doing already. They don't need my help to help them do that better. So to answer the original question, is stropping alone enough? Yes, if you've got the right compounds that are going to allow you to remove what you need to remove quickly and efficiently. So for instance, if you got a chip in your blade and you need to remove metal around that chip to get it back to the right shape, you can do that on a strop. It's just going to take you a lot longer. It would save you a lot of time if you did it on sandpaper or if you did it on some diamond stones. If you don't have a chip in your blade, doing it on a strop is absolutely the way to go. And if you got the right grits, you can run through that real quick and get it done. It won't take you that crazy long. So that fuzzy line, I hope we've kind of figured out where that fuzzy line between stropping and sharpening is. We've talked about that a little bit and why that line matters. And I hope that helps answer the question for you. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching the video. I really appreciate it. I hope this video helped you in some way, and if it did, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Head over to Instagram, Facebook, give me a like and a follow over there. If you enjoy this type of content, I'm going to have more off-the-cuff, less polished stuff over on my Patreon. The link will be in the description below. If you'd like to take part in that, you can. I'm going to include things that I might not have included before because making a video for YouTube requires a lot of spit and polish. It requires a lot of extra work editing to make this video look presentable. And over there, I'm going to have content that's very off the cuff. You might hear my kids or my family in the background while I'm recording, but it'll be more content. So if you're looking to get more of me, I'm a pretty nice guy, if I do say so myself, then you can go over there to do that. Really appreciate you guys. I'll see you next time. Bye. Oh, don't forget to watch my videos pop up on the screen.